This is a quick test before we get fully started. Every time I try to put my phone down, it's ending the stream. I'm not fully sure why. So, okay, that's good enough. So, I've had one hell of a month, actually, and today I'm pretty tired. Um, I still want to read though, but I'll probably only do one chapter rather than two like I've typically done so far. So that's just a heads up. So, just a second. There we go. All right. Now, where were we? Oh, that's right. The Screaming Eels. Just lying. Please understand it's a Princess Bride reference. If you haven't seen that movie, see that movie. Please, your life will improve drastically for that. Okay. Chapter 5. Legion Tower is a landmark in Newport, 50 floors high, a full 10 to 20 floors taller than most of the buildings around it. It stands at the northern end of the downtown core of towers along the southeast shoreline of Puget Sound. The bottom floors are rented out as office space, but nobody really knows what they do with the top 30. The tower is a throwback to the days of stone and steel, with its almost cathedral-esque styling and Art Deco arches soaring to meet each other at the tower's apex. At the top of the huge balcony protrudes from the building's east side, mirroring the one on the west. The balconies are large enough to land military helicopters, but the main thing to notice is their lack of guardrails. They're not meant for casual loitering. They're entryways for people who can fly. We zip around and between skyscrapers downtown and approach Legion Tower from the south, bank around, and come up on the east landing pad. As the lip of the balcony comes up fast, I realize my speed is much higher than I thought. It's it's like I landed your face, right? The impact is jarring all the way down to the root of my spine. I go end over end for a good 20 feet and skid to a stop, spread eagled on my back. A week ago, something like this would have splattered me all over the landing pad. Tonight, it rips the knee of my jeans, and that's about it. I'm okay, I say, getting to my feet. Valkyra sits gently down next to me, and Carapace drops to the ground with a clank a little ways off. In front of a pair of double-glass doors, a woman in a lab coat waits for us. Her dark hair is pulled back into a braid reaching most of the way down her back, and her steel-rimmed glasses are perfectly circular. Her cigarette tip flares, and then she says, "Welcome to Legion Tower. I'm Doc Impossible. You ever had a physical, kid?" "I've had two in the past week." "Yeah, it's my new hobby." Doc Impossible smiles and blows a stream of smoke back over her shoulder. "We're gonna get along just fine. I'll see you two at the briefing," she says to Carapace and Valkyra. They head one way, and Doc Impossible beckons me to follow her in another. She leads me to an elevator, which drops us deep into the building. Maybe I expected the elevator to be, I don't know, special. It doesn't feel like I'm really here. The elevator opens on a floor that appears to only have one small antechamber before another door, a massive sliding thing that clicks and thunks elaborately before it opens and closes. Doc Impossible stabs out her cigarette in an ashtray next to the door, fishes in her jacket's inner pocket for a piece of gum, and pops it in her mouth. She doesn't chew it. She just crimps it in the back of her teeth and holds it there. We pass through an airlock where a field of golden light sweeps over us. up and down, forward and back. The panel above the door to the exit lights up with an anime-style happy face. Endings. "Welcome to my lab," says Doc Impossible, as the airlock's magnetic bolts thunk open, and a door like a vault opens in front of us. "We might be here a while. Lavatory's over there. Make sure you stand still for decon once you're done." Doc Impossible's lab takes up this entire floor. The place is wall-to-wall hypertech, the super science that brings us wonders from 1,000 possible futures, devices that are decades or centuries beyond what baseline tech can manage. Nobody really knows what makes hypertech possible. What's obvious is that some people, most of whom don't show any inclination whatsoever of being metahuman, seem to have a knack for the development and manufacture of technology far in advance of what's normally considered the state of the art. The only reason we're not all living in space stations orbiting a neutron star or something like that is because hypertech is, oh, it has problems. The biggest is probably that it's amazingly hard to replicate, to the point where the government has officially given up trying to get mass production working. Nobody believes them when they say that, though. The Pentagon uses as much hypertech as they can get their hands on, but it's all custom-made gear that's hard to replace. At first, some hypertech developers tried to explain their work, but it neither clicked with the mainstream. Experiments failed when universities tried to replicate them. Functioning devices sometimes contradicted known laws of physics, and etc., and etc. And so now they're mainly a community unto themselves, studiously ignored by mainstream science, which tends to mutter and grumble every time the speculative technology is mentioned. Every hypertech artifact has to be more or less handcrafted, often out of components which themselves require days or weeks of work. Reliability is a huge issue too, since it's all buggier than a Louisiana swamp. And if you didn't make it yourself, you probably won't know how to fix it. Safety can be an issue as well. All those metahumans who got their powers in lab accidents, guess what kind of lab they were working in? And not all lab accidents are happy ones. People have died in really horrible ways. But that doesn't make it any less amazing to step into the future. Everywhere I look, there's glass and steel, with displays and readouts projected against floor to ceiling windows. The floor glows softly white. You'd think it would feel sterile and maybe a little cold, but everything is colorful, inviting. The readouts are projected in vibrant colors, so this wall might be 5 shades of blue, but the room next to it is done all up in green. The air is just the right temperature, and somehow feels soft. Somewhere, there are speakers filtering ambient electronica through the air, gentle rising and falling tunes to comfort you even as you forget they're there. Holy crap. You like it? It took me ages to figure out what to do with all this space, says Doc Impossible. She's got her hands deep in lab coat pockets as we walk down a hallway that is daffodil yellow on one side and watery blue on the other. We come to an intersection and encounter a robot that looks like a crash test dummy with a camera for a head, walking a pug. "Hey, make sure he gets it all out this time, okay?" says Doc Impossible. The robot nods at her and heads the way we came, the pug trotting alongside it. "You built a robot to walk your dog?" No, I built it as a test for a new colloquial speech voice interface. Putting it on Poop Patrol was just a bonus. This way. We take a turn down a hallway and pass a room where the windows have no projections. Inside there are 2 rows of steel pedestals, topped with cylindrical glass tanks. Each tank is filled with human brains floating in a soupy liquid, all run through with wires and tubes. Some of them have big chunks replaced with what looks like a bundle of spindly circuitry. "What are those?" I ask. "Donor brains. Carapace and I are working on a new kind of neurological prosthetic." Her face lights up as she speaks. "It's really cool stuff, actually. We're learning how to program nanomachines to turn neurons into synthetic replacements without interrupting the continuity of consciousness for the patient. Early applications will probably be for things like new therapies for Alzheimer's or MS, but the possibilities are a chirping noise from a phone deep in one of her jacket pockets, and at the same time, the lights under one of the brain tubes switches from white to yellow. Oh, damn, says Doc Impossible. She throws open the lab door and sweeps inside. In half a moment, she's got to the casing the yellow lit tank's pedestal open and is kneeling, elbow deep inside the machine. I told him. I fucking told him. I poke my head in the lab. What's going on? That damn Lynx keeps cutting out. The process requires a very steady, very clean power supply. I use a hypertech solution, but Carapace talked me into use something off the shelf components. We're trying to. Shit. Hold on. And there. She looks up. Hand me that voltmeter. It's the fat yellow phone looking thing with the wires coming out of it. There's a device like that sitting on a table just inside the door. I pick it up and hand it to her. Thank you, she says, tapping up some program on the machine's screen. Anyhow, we're trying to generalize the technology to baseline tech so that someday it could be run without hypertech. I think we should have just gotten the damn thing working first before we got ambitious. The brain right here, we're trying to convert it to 100% synthetic and still retain its continuity profile. If we could do that, we could make a true neural prosthetic for almost any kind of traumatic brain injury. Hell, maybe even immortality is. Something Doc Impossible said finally clicks over in my head. Continuity of consciousness, she said. A horrifying possibility occurs to me. Wait, you mean these are alive? Oh, of course not, Doc Impossible says sharply. She looks up at me, her brow drawn. That would be horrible. These are all from dead people. The test data is still good, though. Oh, sorry. Her lips press thin, but then she shrugs. Just because we're doing super science doesn't mean we run without an ethics review board, kid. Doc Impossible closes the hatch, and the lights into the brain tank turn white again. The medical examination lab is done up in soothing blues, and once we're inside, Doc Impossible taps a button projected on the glass. The room's wall become frosted and nearly opaque for privacy. There's an examination bed, some counters cluttered with papers and supplies, and a lot of exotic and high-tech equipment I don't even think I've seen before. Okay, kid, do you have something that you want me to call you? Danny. Okay, Danny. I've got 8 doctorates, and 2 of them are medical, so it's nothing I haven't seen before. But I'm gonna need you to get naked here in a moment. Right, oh, why? I told you. I've got to give you a physical. Why? Ah, okay. You see, this has never happened before. 3 other people have carried the mantle before you, and none of them. Gotcha. Doc Impossible turns her back, and so with trembling fingers and warming cheeks, I start pulling my shirt off. When you're indecent, step inside that big tube over there. She gestures vaguely to one side. I drop my clothes in a pile, and my underwear on top of that. There's a whoosh of air from around the lower edges of the wall, and suddenly the room is 10 degrees warmer, and much more comfortable to be naked in. I step under the tube she indicated, and a big thing of thick, curved glass that slides down from the ceiling to seal against the door with a hiss. My ears pop. A bulky ring of steel, studded with all sorts of what look to be projectors, is set around the top. Doc Impossible is looking at a whole interface projected on the wall, including a simulated keyboard hologram hovering midair. She taps a few buttons and the tube goes opaque. Thanks, I say. Don't worry about it, she says, her voice piped in speakers that I can't see. This'll take a few moments. Try to stand still, please. A clunk, a thunk, a deep, heavy thrum. The ring of sensors drops down to the floor, and I can see the wall going transparent wherever the sensors are looking in. The sensor ring pulses out thick bars of light. It travels up and down, washes every part of me in light. It feels like I'm in a flatbed scanner. An aperture opens in the chamber ceiling, and a thin hose drops down. Please drink several deep swallows of this, says Doc Impossible. What is it? I ask, and then start sucking on the tube hesitantly. Cherry soda, she says, and I take a deep swallow. It's just the right level of cold and fizzy. And it's also radioactive contrast dye that will light you up like Chernobyl. What? You're wearing the mantle of Dreadnought, Danny. You really think a little thing like cesium is gonna hurt you? Now hold still for a second. I want to see what it does. The sensor ring drops down again and scans my stomach intensively for a few moments. Okay, now drink from the tube again. Root beer, this time. What's in that? Cyanide? Nah, it's strychnine. What could you possibly learn from that? Oh, by itself, not much. But it is also irradiated, and strychnine permeates the body's tissues very quickly. In your case, that happens to be all it will do. I presume you want to be done with this before the sun gets up. The tube retracts, and a small plastic baggie on a hook is lowered in its place. Inside the baggie is something that looks like a pill, except it's half the size of a tube of chapstick. It's got rounded edges that seem to be coated in soft rubber. Inside is a small green LED on one side that is flashing on and off. What's this? A suppository. No. Shove it up your butt. No. It's for science. No. Please? You are going to buy me a pizza. Okay, deal. A lot of pizza. The sensor ring locks into place above me, and the tube hisses open. Doc Impossible is facing away from me, sitting in a chair and consulting what looks like full body x rays of me projecting in 3D against the glass. Well, good news. You're definitely not going to die of radiation poisoning, because that would have happened already. She pops her tab gun out and tosses it in the trash, slips another in her mouth. You're really tied to that nicotine, aren't you? I say as I step into my pants. Yep, she says. That stuff will kill you, you know. Danny, I'm in the super science racket, and I am not nonpartisan. Uh, Um, that means someone who doesn't take a side in our little fraternity of extraordinarily empowered social rejects. She circles a finger in the air to indicate the whole of Legion Tower. If you pick a side, you're going to make enemies. If a lab accident doesn't get me, one of them will. I won't have time to get cancer. I pull my shirt over my head. Or maybe it just means you'll get like super tumors and they'll petition to be recognized as independent people. Doc Impossible laughs and flicks a glance over her shoulder to check if I'm dressed. Yeah, and then they'll be my mortal enemies, but they're also the ones who killed my father. Yeah, and they start going out at night and doing their own experiments, and so they get huge and rah. I start pantomiming out some eldritch horror leaping up from my chest, claws hooked, teeth bared. Doc out of her chair doing the same thing, and we're halfway through theorizing how the National Guard would get called, in when the door opens and there's Carapace. Doc Impossible and I freeze mid pantomime and snarl. Have you prepared the briefing yet? He asks. You mind? Says Impossible, with narrowed eyes. We're bonding. Just get your report ready on the situation. Yeah, fine, whatever, says Doc. She makes a shooing motion with her hands. After a long, awkward moment of staring at me, Carapace turns and clanks away. The door slides shut. Did did I do something? I ask. Oh God, what if I messed this up already? Doc Impossible seems to sag a little. No, it's just Dreadnought was really important to him. And to tell you the truth, Carapace wasn't super excited to learn who'd gotten the mantle. I'm sorry. You really deserve more time to get used to this before you have to deal with that kind of thing. Capes in private are weird. Doesn't even begin to describe it. She gestures to a chair. Have a seat. You know Dark Fist? Oh, yeah, he's big news in Empire, right? I say as I slide a chair over and sit in it. Yep, he's just a billionaire with a utility belt. Doc sits in her own chair. His superpower is being rich, okay? Not a single real power to his name. He doesn't even use hypertech. That doesn't sound right at all. Are you sure the things I've heard are the things the criminals tell each other to make themselves feel better after getting beaten up by a rich boy in fancy cosplay? I've met the dude, and I promise you he's as baseline as they come. What do you think convinces someone with that kind of money to patrol the streets at night, going hand to hand with thugs who have automatic weapons? Are you starting to see he's someone we chose to hang out with? But I do have superpowers, I say, and I kind of want to help people. And that's normal. It's totally is. And good for you. But did you see how Carapace is still wearing his armor? He lives here. This is his home. But he's still walking around ready to slug it out with a platoon of tanks. The whole white cape thing isn't a real great way to spend a life. The normal thing to do with powers is to use them to get a job. You've seen aerial couriers downtown, right? Of course, every major city has a few people who can fly, who make their living zipping time sensitive materials from one end of the city to the other. Once you get 10 feet in the air, there's no such thing as a traffic jam. Until now, I'd never really stopped to think about why they'd be doing that instead of fighting crime. It seems normal. They're just able to fly around town, right? It's like being really good with a bike, but a little cooler, is all. Right. Courier work is real popular with anybody who has mobility power. High pay, short hours, and dead easy work that lets you spend most of your week doing whatever you want to do without worrying about money. A lot of fire departments will pay more than you think for people whose powers would help them in search and rescue. Hell, 1 in 100 of those guys doesn't even need to breathe. They don't need much to draw attention to themselves, but they're there. That's what a normal person who wants to help people with their power does. They join a government or a nonprofit or even just a company that's not evil. But those are just special abilities, right? Not real superpowers. Uh, Doc Impossible spreads her fingers and waggles her hand from side to side. That line between special abilities and superpowers is something that nonpartisans came up with. A lot of the nonpartisans have abilities that, if used to their full extent, would be superpowers, no matter how much they torture the definition. They don't want to be associated with us. Someone hears you have a superpower, and suddenly they don't want to date you or hire you or rent an apartment to you. Because everybody assumes superpowers means you must have super enemies. Who wants to be out on a dinner with somebody when a psychopath in a black cape shows up and starts melting people with a death ray? So all of a sudden, it's no, sir, I don't have a superpower. I just have a special ability. It helps cut down on the jealousy, too. There's a flutter of unease in my chest when she says this, because, yeah, I went through some places where I was, or phases, where I was very jealous of people with superpowers, but strangely, not of people with special abilities. Doc Impossible seems to read the thoughts flitting across my face and nods. Yeah, you see how that works? She says. Look, I don't want to scare you away from being a white cape if that's what you want to be. There's nothing like it in the world, and when it's good, it feels like you're a god. I wish I could spare you all the gruesome details until after you've gotten comfortable with your powers, but you're going to be making some decisions soon. Sooner than I think you should have to. You deserve to do it with your eyes wide open. What kind of decisions? Doc Impossible sighs and leans back in her chair. Dreadnought was very important to the status quo. It would mean a lot to us and to the city if you were willing to take his place once you're old enough. We've been really lucky that all of the other people who've worn the mantle wanted to be white capes, but there's nothing that says you have to. You have zero obligation here. You understand? This isn't like political power. You don't fight for this. It was dropped in your lap. So all those great responsibilities that come with great power, those are only yours if you want them to be. It's not fair to demand more of you, and worse, it's not safe. This is a hard life. Someone as strong as you, if suffering from mental and emotional trauma, could quickly become dangerous. So a lot of people are going to want you to be a white cape, but only you can decide if that's right for you. Maybe I could become a black cape, I say with a smile. Doc Impossible looks at me the way you'd look at someone across an open grave. Don't ever joke about that, Danny. Sorry, I say quickly. It's okay, it's just we've lost a lot of people to them. They're the scum of the earth, and don't let any gray cape tell you differently. In fact, don't hang out with gray capes. They're just capes who aren't always horrible. Right. I guess being a cape, a white cape, I mean, sounds like it would be pretty cool. It's not like I've ever been scared before, so why not try it? Why not join when I'm old enough? Doc Impossible rolls her chair closer to me and puts her hands on my knees. Her face is open and sincere as I've ever seen anyone. First, please understand that I don't mean to talk down to you. Okay? Okay. You're 15. Right now, you see the fights, you see the excitement, you see the power, and all of that is sexy as hell. I know, believe me, I know. But trust me, the world is not always going to look the same to you as it does now. I know. Listen to me. Her fingers dig into my knees a little more than I expected of merely human hands, and I lean away from her with sudden vehemence. Someday you might get tired of needing to know where the nearest safe house is at all times. Someday you might get sick of needing to take vacations in disguise. You might want to buy a house and be able to invite casual friends over and not lie to them about who you are. You might want to be able to make plans that don't involve being on call for combat duty for the rest of your life. You might fall in love with someone who can't protect themselves from the kind of people you are going to piss off if you wear a cape. You have a family now? They're going to have to go in a witness protection program if you start caping. They might have to go underground if your identity is compromised. Do you understand? It means living under siege. We're not all roommates in this tower because we can't stand to be apart from each other. We live here because it's safe here. We go anywhere else in the world except maybe to another team's HQ, and we have to be ready to throw down at a moment's notice. Once you choose this, it is really hard to walk it back. If your identity is blown, it's basically impossible. They want you to make a decision that is going to change the rest of your life. It will narrow your world and narrow your choices. You will do things no one else can even dream of, but you'll never be able to do almost everything normal people take for granted. There is a reason, Danny, a really good reason, that most of us are nonpartisan. Doc Impossible drops into silence. Her eyes plead for me to understand. I, I think I get it. Good, good. She lets go of my knees and scoots back from me. Now that she's done speaking, she suddenly seems tired. Doc Impossible takes a moment to collect herself and then puts on a smile. Now, I found a few things in your physical you might be interested to know. Oh, to start with, you're as fitting in as an entire Olympics team. Fitter, actually, than any individual athlete could ever hope to be. Nobody has enough hours in the day to train every part of themselves to the level that you're at. You've got the cardiovascular system of a marathon runner, the flexibility of a gymnast, and the muscle tone of a swimmer. Your muscle density is off the charts. You weigh about 180 pounds. Your strength and speed are beyond the human limits, of course, but even without them, you're a better physical specimen than basically anyone else alive. I smile. Cool. And here's the bad news. If you want kids, you're gonna have to let me convert some of your blood into sperm and have someone else provide an egg and womb. You don't have a uterus. You'll never get pregnant. I'm falling. I am falling down into a deep pit, and at the bottom there are flames. I'm up on my feet before I know what I'm doing. I kick back at the chair and it rockets across the room, gets embedded in a wall behind me. An enormous spiderweb of cracks slams out across the entire wall panel, which flickers and throws random, contorted image across his shattered segments. Damn it! What the hell, kid, says Doc Impossible, rising. Sorry, sorry, I, I sigh. The bubbling cauldron of frustration is still there, even if it's not boiling over. I guess I thought that I was finally a real girl. Hey, none of that. She takes me by the shoulders. You think it's a uterus that makes you a woman? Bullshit. You feel like you're a girl. You live it. It's a part of you. Then you're a girl. That's the end of it. No quibbling. You're as real a girl as anyone. And you really need to learn to express your anger better. I'm I'm sorry. I'm really. And thanks. I close my eyes and take a breath. How did you know that was bad news? Doc Impossible smiles gently. This whole time, you haven't even once asked about changing back. It's pretty obvious that you're transgender, Danny. She taps my forehead. If you were a boy up here, I'd think you would have mentioned it by now. The other Dreadnoughts reported that when they took the mantle, it changed their bodies into what they'd always wanted it to be. Some got a little taller, and one grew back some lost toes, that sort of thing. But they were all cis. That's to say, they weren't trans, so their bodies didn't change much their gender identities because they were already matching. You, on the other hand, became a very pretty young woman who, upon extremely close examination, can be seen to have a history of masculine dimorphism. Real close, like chromosome level close. Why not, you know, change it all? Doc Impossible shrugs. I don't know. You're a sample size of one. It's hard to draw any firm conclusions. If I had to say, I'd guess that the mantle can only do so much with what it has available to work with when this change happens. For instance, your testicles have migrated up your abdomen and have become reconfigured to secrete estrogen and progesterone, but they don't have any eggs and are anatomically recognizable as testes. Oh, then it hits me. This ideal new body, the magazine cover perfection, the shampoo commercial hair, even the fashionable shape of my thighs. It's more than a different look. It's a window into my head. Oh, gross. There's nothing wrong with being trans, Danny. No, I mean, why? I look this way. Mom took me to a fancy bra store the other day, and there were posters everywhere of these women. Nobody looks like that in real life, right? Except you and a few genetic lottery winners. Yeah, so my ideal self, Doc Impossible chuckles, is a photoshopped underwear model. I see. I guess it sounds a little stupid to be upset over being pretty. Yes, yes, it does. You think you're immune to advertisements? That'd be a hell of a superpower, Danny. Even if Dreadnought were immune to mind control. And he isn't. You've spent your entire life swimming in the stuff. Doc Impossible turns back to the test results. At least the wall I broke wasn't the one she was working on. And starts sliding files and images into a new folder with a few flicks of her fingers. Don't beat yourself up over it. They'll find some way to make you unhappy with your body sooner or later, so until then, enjoy it. There's a cup of what looks like orange juice in that fridge over there. Drink it and head on over to the lavatory marked with the nuclear radiation symbol, just outside the door and across the hall. You're gonna want to purge those irradiated fluids from your body before going home and contaminate your family. The fridge is one of those minibar details you get in hotels, sometimes, or at least so I've been told. The drink actually does taste like orange juice, and it's a good thing the radiation toilet was so close because, well, look, that stuff cleared out my entire digestive tract in a few minutes. What do you think it went? Medicine, especially the hypertech kind, is gross. I don't think I want to use the toilet again for a week, I say, as I return to the medical lab on wobbly knees. It's all out of you? Good. Let's get you suited up. You just fully explained why I shouldn't be wearing a cape yet. You're a teenager with friggin' superpowers. You think we don't know you're going to experiment? We'd rather you do it in throwaway colors. A suit that won't signify a cape persona, but will protect your identity from anyone who sees you. Come, you're gonna love this. She takes me to a different part of the lab, where the machinery is all hypertech 3D printers and clusters of robot arms like giant metal spiders curled up dead. I'm wearing a charcoal gray bodysuit, still warm and smelly from the fabricator. It's snug but flexible, matching boots and gloves, with a separate cape that goes down to the back of my knees. The cape is longer in black, but also wraps around my chest well, like a mantle that covers my chest down past my collarbones. I'm experiment flexing my arms a little, trying not to be too obvious that I'm seeing how the cape would sit with my arms stretched out in front of me, like in the classic flight pose. It's actually pretty thin material, but slick and sort of heavy. It shouldn't bunch up or get in the way of throwing a punch. I'm not super thrilled about the cowl. It feels constricting around my neck. Not that it's hard to breathe or move, but it's there and kind of bugging me. It's open at the top to let my hair grow out, and I'm touched that she included this traditionally feminine gendered touch to a suit that otherwise seems to be patterned after Dreadnought's classic uniform. You like it? Says Doc. Yeah, yeah, it's cool. But the colors. I know. The suit doesn't have any markings or emblems, and the grays aren't solid, but mottled with a kind of soft focus camouflage pattern. It's what we meant by throwaway colors. They'll basically make you invincible in the night or invisible in the night sky, and it signals to other capes that you are not looking for a fight. What if someone decides they want to fight anyhow? Don't give it to them, she says firmly. Run here. They won't follow you inside the tower. You're always welcome here, Danny. Okay? Okay. Thanks. Cool. She turns and spits her nicotine gum into another little trash can, pops a replacement in her mouth. Those things are supposed to last for longer, right? Now, let's get you introduced to the team proper. Ah, okay. Right? A flare of giddy nervousness lights up my chest. I'm going to meet the entire Legion Pacifica. Like, tonight. I am going to go on for just a little bit longer. Right after a sip of tea. How's it going, gamers? Poggers. That's what I'm supposed to do, right? In outdated terminology. Chapter 6. The briefing room is surreal because it's exactly how I imagined it would be. The elevators here are mundane, and the hallways are normal. But then you turn the corner, and past some sliding doors, there's a 15-foot high holographic projection of the Earth, with glowing dotted lines tracking the orbital trajectories of at least 5 space stations, and color-coded markers for important surface contacts. Off to the side, near a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the Newport skyline, there's a conference table with smaller projections floating around it. All the chairs are softly lit by unobtrusive spotlights, and the table is gleaming glossy wood with holographic haptic sensor interfaces embedded at each seat. Standing near the table is the most oddly dressed group of people you're ever likely to meet, and holy crap, no kidding, Legion Pacifica. These people are so famous I recognize them by their silhouettes. Valkyra is chatting with Magma, an enormous slab of muscle in the shape of a man, with his dark brown skin and bushy black beard, and his eyes glowing visibly even over here. He normally fights wearing a kind of circus strongman getup, but in here he's content to wear a suit, with his shirt collar unbuttoned and no tie. There's Grey Witch. Her dark robe hooded up is sorry. Her dark robe's hood is up, and she's facing away from me, but she's instantly recognizable by the raven that always sits on her shoulder. She's standing apart with Carapace, their heads tilted off toward each other in some quiet conversation. Chlorophyll is half man, half plant, wearing a tight t-shirt over his leaf green chest. He's reading a paperback book, which is such a normal thing to do that it's weird. The glass doors slide shut behind Doc and Possible and me, and then we have a good half-minute walk across the briefing room to get to the conference table. A half-minute is as long a time to get self-conscious about wearing a friggin' glorified wetsuit indoors. Please, please, please tell me this cowl covers enough of my cheeks to hide the blushing. Yep, she's got superpowers all right, says Doc Impossible by way of greeting as we arrive. I told you the physical was a boring idea. We needed to know what happened, said Carapace, stepping away from Grey Witch. In any case, we'd like to hear your report formally. We'd also like to meet the young lady, says Magma, in a surprisingly rich and urbane voice. In most of the videos I've seen him, he's roaring like fire and brimstone and smacking black capes into the ground. Sure, says Doc Impossible. She gestures for me to step forward, and I do, feeling like I'm someone else watching from the far distance. In the elevator, Doc Impossible asked me how I wanted to be introduced, like it was no big deal. She's good like that. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Danielle Tozer, carrier of the mountain. Daniel Tozer, says Grey Witch. She's looking at me like I'm an interloper. Her face is pale, heavy black eyeshadow standing out against an almost white skin. Her dark hair hangs lank against her forehead. The raven on her shoulder tilts its head sideways and eyeballs me. Myra, can you at least try to be pleasant? Says Doc Impossible. You can call me Danny, if it's easier, I say, almost on reflex. Crap! Why did I say that? Impossible was standing up for me, and it felt good to hear someone use my girl name, my real name, and then I'm such an idiot. That all passes through my head between one heartbeat and the next. Pleased to meet you, Danny, says Magma, stepping forward and offering me his hand. Mine disappears into his when we shake. I'm Magma. I know, I say, again on reflex. Jesus Christ, what is wrong with me? But he smiles and nods, and I feel a little better. Valkyra steps forward and bows to me. Hi, we already met, my mouth says before it can stop it. Someone Please, stop me before I kill my dignity again. Not formally. Well met, young champion. Okay, okay. I'm gonna be honest. I've had a crush on Valkyra since I was like the time I discovered boobs were a thing that exists, but this whole old timey talk is way clunky in everyday conversation and it's kind of weirding me out. And with that, I suddenly feel okay because I'm not the only freak in here. I smile and bow back to Valkyra, and she nods solemnly. Chlorophyll shakes my hand. His skin is cool and a little moist. Hello, I'm Chlorophyll. It's always nice to meet another queer with powers. My stomach lurches. Oh, yeah, I'm gay now. It had never occurred to me. Now I'm wondering how obvious my crush on Valkyra is. It's nice to see some trans representation in the community. Uh, so, uh, I kind of trail off lamely. For some stupid reason, I thought Doc's examination would be the end of it, and my transition wouldn't be up for discussion anymore. We all know, says Grey Witch, who hasn't made a move toward introducing herself. I mean, not that she needs to, but still. Your little transition was caught on video. The way she says that puts me on guard. What? I snap and look over at Doc Impossible. That's how we found you, but don't worry, she says. We got to the video before anyone else did. Our copy is the only copy in the world. Can you delete it? I ask. That was private. It happened in public, says Grey Witch. I didn't get to choose where, I mutter. Dad's in my head, telling me I shouldn't be such a pussy and sneak up when I'm talking. I wish he'd shut up. We'll look into that, Danny, says Doc Impossible with a glance at Carapace. But for now, we need it for the investigation. I promise you the video isn't going anywhere. Why don't we take our seats? Says Magma, gesturing toward the conference table. The chairs are the really expensive kind, with a whole rack of nods and levers on the side and soft leather covering deep, inviting cushions. Da- Danny, we need to discuss some things with you, says Carapace after we're all seated. Okay. First, you'll see that on the tablet in front of you that there are two books we'd like you to read. One is an ethics manual for handling Dreadnought's, your new powers. That nervousness from earlier is coming back. It's kind of amazing how clearly it's being transmitted, even though his voice is mechanically filtered and he's wearing power armor. I pick up the tablet. It's an off-brand knockoff, which is disappointing somehow, and you see two files prominently displayed on the home screen. The other is a guide for young metahumans, which you may wish to read. Okay, you said I was going to get a provisional membership? Carapace looks at Grey Witch, and she leans in. That is still in consideration. You'll have to agree to abide by certain rules, says Carapace. Nothing onerous, but we're serious about them. Okay, so what are they? First, you must keep your powers secret as much as possible. This is to protect yourself and the people around you. I nod. That seems reasonable, especially after what Doc Impossible told me in the lab. He continues. If you're going to experiment with your powers, you will do it while wearing your suit. Get into the habit of not using your powers when you're in civilian clothes. You never know when you're on camera. Fly only at night, with at least 100 feet between you and the ground except for takeoffs and landings. Okay? And of course, don't commit any crimes. Don't harass anyone. Don't destroy private or public property. Avoid television crews and reporters. Don't interfere with the emergency services. Don't accept any payments for use of your powers. If you have serious financial need, we can cover it within reason. So don't feel pressured to take money. This is all in that guide, along with detailed explanations should you wish to know the reasoning behind the rules. Most importantly, no caping. That means no investigations, no foiling bank robberies, no looking for trouble. Alright? You don't have the training or experience for that. And if you rush in without thinking, you might take things worse than before you arrived. I opened the handbook file and scrolled down to the big list of rules. There's a lot of don'ts in it. Okay, I say as I flick through it. Excellent, says Magma. Now, on a more serious topic. He glances over at Carapace. Carapace is silent for a moment and then says, we need to talk about Dreadnought's murder. My stomach flips. Of course, it's still not something I like to think about. The best thing that's ever happened to me came out of someone else important, someone almost universally loved, getting killed. Right. So, what do you want to know? Above the table, a trio of flat holograms appears. 3 video screens showing grainy security cam footage of the fall of Dreadnought. The recording is jerky, the frame advancing only once or twice a second. The video enlightens us not to the method of his demise, says Valkyra. She says video, like it's the name of an eldritch anomaly. His murderer, Utopia, is but a minor power, and young. We have little information on her, nor do we know what the masked girl with Pistol's twin. Oh, that's Calamity, I say. She's a vigilante. You know her? Asked Doc Impossible. No, we only talked the one time. Start from the beginning, says Carapace. What were you doing behind the mall? I was, uh, painting my toenails. Oh, says Carapace, shifting in his seat. And this was even before your empowerment? Well, yeah, I've always been a girl. I shrug. That's the way I could express it. Grey Witch snorts like it's a bad joke. My little flicker of unease about her grows. Carapace clears his throat, a sound like steel wool being dragged over cast iron. Let's move on to when Dreadnought fell next to you. Why didn't you run? Asks Magma. You had no obligations to act. Because he was hurt? I say, confused. Isn't it obvious why I did it? But my answer seems to confirm something for Magma, and he glances over at Valkyra. She nods slightly. Did he bid you to flee? Yes. Yet you did not. Yes. My voice seems to be getting quieter with each answer. I hope these are the right answers. I'm screwing it all up, just like I should have known I would. Why? I wanted to help him. You have a champion's heart, Danielle Tozer, says Valkyra, and I try not to sag too obviously with relief. A moment later, a sunny glow blooms inside my chest. Valkyra gave me a compliment. Awesome. Did he say anything to you? Asks Carapace. Yes, he said it was Utopia, and she had some kind of weapon. He had a hole right through his chest. We've seen the body, says Carapace. Right. My cheeks get warm all over again. Of course they have. That's right. I'm an idiot. Sorry. More questions. We start going through that day step by step. Was I able to see anything about Utopia? Did Dreadnought have any particular last words he wanted to pass along? I tell them about hearing Dreadnought fall, about trying to move him under cover and giving him water. As the video advances, they pause it and ask me questions about particular points. Little things. Things that don't make sense to me. Like, did I smell anything unusual? Then it happens. Dreadnought is hidden behind some concrete, and I'm barely in view. There's a flash of light, and then I collapse. My body glows for a moment, a much longer moment than I remember. I didn't realize that it took so long, I say. That's something that struck me as unusual, says Doc Impossible. Granted, we only have a single other mantle transfer on film, and a sample size of 2 isn't much to go on. But your transformation took a lot longer than your predecessors did. I think it has something to do with how dramatic the changes were for you compared to him. She starts the video again. On the holographic screen, I'm coming to, and a moment later jerk back from an alarm. My throat clenches up watching this. Again, I am profoundly thankful to him for this beautiful, wonderful, amazing gift he gave me. We get to the part of the video where Calamity makes her appearance. While I'm staring down at myself in shock, she's creeping along the mall's side. She's got her pistols out and her mask up when she comes into frame. I'm sitting there, waiting for the police to show with my head in my hands, oblivious to the world. I see for the first time that when she stepped around the corner, she had both her guns pointed at my head. We looked at all the other security footage from the mall that day, says Carapace. She doesn't appear in as much of it as we expected. She knows where all the blind spots are, it seems. What can you tell us about her? I try to reach back to that day, but honestly, the memories are hazier than I expected. The big neon exclamation points on that part of my life is getting my new body. Everything else seems fuzzy and unimportant next to that. Um, she's my age, I think, extremely athletic. Uh, she hadn't heard of Utopia and was surprised someone that hadn't heard of could kill Dreadnought. Why did you leave with her? Says Chlorophyll. She said if the cops showed up, they'd make me testify against Utopia. I was scared what would happen if I did that. And you believed her? Asks Grey Witch. She seemed to know what she was talking about. I mutter lamely. Your credulity delayed our investigation, says Grey Witch. This is the first we're hearing about a new weapon. It matters not, says Valkyra. A minor delay will not keep her from us. It may cost lives, says Grey Witch. Danny isn't responsible for what Utopia does, says Doc Impossible. What a friendly and convenient world you live in, Doctor. Everyone makes mistakes, says Magma. There's no reason to dwell on this one. Agreed. Unless there's any more questions, let's move on, says Carapace. We're going to need to start thinking about what your supernym will be. Aren't I Dreadnought? Not yet, Doc Impossible says at the same time as Carapace says. No, that's not for you. They look at each other sharply. I can't see why she wouldn't be, if she chooses to be a cape, says Doc Impossible. I don't think it's appropriate, Carapace says. Why not, says Magma. All her predecessors took the name along with the mantle. But isn't this... Carapace leans forward, hand out like he's trying to reach some common ground. It's different, right? How? Asks Valkyra, with ice like a Viking's nightmare in her tone. Well, the circumstances of her empowerment are unusual. Her, I say, and everyone looks at me like they'd forgotten I was already here. That's in dispute, says Grey Witch primly. You were raised to be a man. Your privilege blinds you and makes you dangerous. I'm just as much a girl as you are. Really, she leans forward, steeples her fingers. Do you even know how to put in a tampon? Go to hell, snaps Doc Impossible. That's hardly called for, says Grey Witch. This is fuck. Doc Impossible stops short, glances at me, and continues. Nonsense, and you know it. Absurdly, I want to remind her I go to high school. We cuss in high school. Your own medical examination proved he had a Y chromosome. He's even got a pair of mutant testicles, says Grey Witch, tapping a screen in front of her. How is that not male? Genetics aren't destiny, says Impossible. We're being sidetracked, says Chlorophyll. Whether Danny is a boy or girl isn't the issue. What we really need is to be talking about if Danny is ready to take Dreadnought's place, no matter what name we settle on. We settle on. It's her choice, says Magma. It is the way of things, says Valkyra, nodding. There are extenuating circumstances that must be considered, says Carapace. Wait, hold on. She's 15, says Doc Impossible. We all agreed after Blackfish died that we only accept adults. We shouldn't even have this conversation for another 3 years. Sure, but there's no reason not to be making plans, says Chlorophyll. With the name, without the name, it doesn't matter. We need that power set in our deck in case we encounter a Mistress Malice level threat. Not to mention the funding that we stand to lose without him. Dreadnought could justify a budget we wouldn't be able to match without him. Oh, so that's what he wants. Thank you, Mr. Queer Solidarity. My fortune is vast. I will make good the shortfall, if and when necessary should compel me, says Valkyra. That wouldn't be fair, says Chlorophyll. You might as well announce you'll be voting twice from now on. Valkyra's wings pull in tight against her back, and she replies in clipped tones. You already enjoy my coin. Does it sway your vote? This tower was but a dream before I. That's apples and oranges. The tower is held in trust. Danny, don't listen to him, says Doc Impossible. We'll get along without you if we need. No, Chlorophyll is right, says Grey Witch, and a few people look at her in surprise. I'm getting the feeling these debates have expected factions, and she's crossing party lines. The mantle is too powerful to be left to waste. Perhaps a more suitable host can be found. All eyes drop on me like lead weights. My voice is small when I speak. Doctor, would my transition stay in place if I gave up the mantle? I I don't know. Then I'm keeping it. As you should, says Magma. He turns to Grey Witch. We've never set that precedent, and we're not going to start now. What makes him worthy? Says Grey Witch. Dreadnought was dying. He had no choice in the matter, no other options. That makes this different than how the last three people got the mantle in the same way. Magma opens his palms questioningly. It's always been a luck of the draw. Maybe that should change. You heard him yourself. He only wants to keep it to be sure of being able to continue perpetuating this masquerade of his. That's not what I said, I said. It's what you meant, she says with poison syrup in her voice. Her meaning was quite plain to me, says Valkyra. You twist her words. Really, what is bothering you? Says Magma. There's more, but I don't hear it. I'm falling away inside to the place I sometimes go when it's too loud at home. This wasn't how it's supposed to go. Isn't it enough to tell him that I'm a girl? What does it really matter what my chromosomes are? Maybe that's enough, Grey Witch. Carapace is saying when I come back. He sounds uncomfortable, like if he could tug on the collar of his armor, he would do it. Your position is noted. She stares at him, almost scarily intense. You can take your provisional membership and shove it, I say, standing up. It's a bit sad these chairs have silent wheels because I would have really loved to scrape some chair legs over the ground just now. But I'm keeping the suit, and I'm keeping the mantle. That is not your decision to make, young man, says Grey Witch. Then come and take it, I shout at her. A few of them are taken aback. I don't think they're used to being threatened by kids, but I can see the realization sinking into them. They can't steal this from me. I'm sure fighting them would be way harder than I expect, but I have the powers of freaking Dreadnought. And even if they won, nobody knows how the mantle transfer works. Yeah, that's what I thought. My guts are twisted into knots. My face is burning. I feel a sudden, icy blanket trying to press me into the floor. But damn it, I'm going to walk out of here with my back straight and my shoulders square. Doc Impossible says something to Grey Witch that sounds like it rhymes with sure a tucking bunt, and there's an explosion of yelling back at the table. I don't stop to listen. I'll stop at this chapter because, as you probably noticed, I was messing up some of the words, so I don't think I have the capacity to do that reliably from today. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night with the stream, so that the next time that I do it, y'all can get a much better performance than what you got today. Have a good night, y'all.